word help, and I have to say that he used that term very loosely, as he was clearly the driving force behind all of this. And so we really do appreciate all the efforts he's put into making this happen. Our conference today is going to start out with an address from our Chief Information Officer, who is Cathy Bates. And she has been in virtually every aspect of information technology that it's possible to be. She was the Information Security Officer, Enterprise Applications Manager, Financial Services person, and Networking Director, so she's really done it all. And we've been very fortunate to have her come to Appalachian, where she's starting to put her focus, or maybe our skeptic, not Arizona, on education. And Appalachian was lucky to have a CIO finally focused people to everybody who happens to listen that education is our primary mission. I salute you for taking the time to come and meet with us this morning and to collaborate with colleagues about all the things that are going on. And without further ado, I think I'll introduce Cathy Bates, our Chief Information Officer and Vice Provost, Associate Vice Chancellor and CIO.
Thank you. It is terrific to be here. I think you guys are going to have a wonderful day. I mean, I'm so excited about all the sessions that you have in front of you today, and I'm really glad to have a chance to talk with you a little bit. This presentation is going to be a little bit different than what I normally do. So you're going to see some sort of me using my own techniques as I talk through this conversation, and some of the advice that I'm giving about how we need to be working. So what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about mobile. Who gets to work on mobile? And the answer is we all do. And I'm going to do a little bit of a conversation about mobile through the lens of the EDUCAUSE Top 10 issues. So a lot of the materials I'm going to use today are from EDUCAUSE. You're going to see that I did not create these slides myself. This is part of a kind of a paradigm of what I want to sort of talk to you about, and some of what we're starting to see in terms of how we're working. EDUCAUSE is our premier technical sort of organization across the country and really around the world for technology in education, in higher education. They create wonderful materials, and this is their top 10 list. They do this every year. They've done it for a number of years. They come up with this list by bringing together about 35 panelists that are from colleges and universities all across the country in various geographic locations, small institutions, large institutions, and they're talking with these folks about what are the biggest technical issues on your campus. So this is a really broad spectrum, and it's perhaps larger than the focus of what our conference is today, but that's not my point. My point today is to say, even with all of these things that you might not see as being related to mobile, guess what? Many of them really are. So we're going to look at the top 10 through the lens of mobile issues. So the first one, leveraging wireless and device explosion on campus. Oh, first I want to just tell you a little bit about my sources here. I did mention that I'm grabbing things from EDUCAUSE. There are so many fabulous resources that EDUCAUSE is really bringing forward to higher education. I've seen such a change in this organization over the last few years. If you're not familiar with EDUCAUSE and some of the offshoot kinds of affiliations and projects that they're working on, it is well worth an investigation of your time. I would believe that every organization here, whether you're from App State or another institution, that you're an EDUCAUSE member and that you can go in and get materials. We at App State are now members not only of EDUCAUSE but also of the ECAR Research Hub. So anybody who's at App State and wants to get any of that research, you can just go in and get it. We're also part of the ELI membership, and that's pretty terrific because that's the learning initiative. And any information that you're looking for there, you can go get as well. And we also are starting to really participate in the surveys. The survey data is tremendous. So last year, this institution did participate at least a portion of the core data survey. Well, we're going to do more than that this year. We're going to complete the whole thing. And then this year, also earlier this year, for the first time, we participated in the study of undergraduate students and information technology, which is a fabulous, fabulous survey. There are so many questions on this survey that really relate to what students are seeing and feeling about their use of technology on campuses. And it's, so much of it is all about learning and what they're doing in the classrooms. So it's really terrific information. We participated this spring, and we'll be getting that information in the next couple of months. We intend to share that back out to our campus so that they will know what our students told us, and we'll also be able to do some benchmarking against other institutions to see how we compare with them in terms of what our students are saying. So the first one, leveraging the wireless device explosion. This is an amazing statistic. 2 years ago, we were sort of at that, just maybe 1 or 2 devices on campus per student for mobility. This year and next year, we expect to hit that 4. And I can tell you at ASU, we have these conversations in Central IT. The students in the residence halls are bumping up against their limit of 4 already. So where we fit on that, we're right up there, really far up there. Our students are bringing multiple devices. They've got a game box and they want to connect that. They have their laptop, they have their tablet, they have their phone. They want them all connected. So it's pretty interesting what this means for us. One of the biggest changes for us is how we're handling our network as a result of this, and how we're handling how the wireless connections work in the residence halls. Because traditional wireless was sort of deployed thinking that they would have maybe one thing that they wanted to put on wireless. Well, now they want to put 4 on, and the wireless access points aren't set up to handle that kind of density. The whole industry is having to go to high density. So these are implications for us, and they're implications all across the campus. The second one is using technology to improve student outcomes. So this is a terrific graph, and I have to apologize. I grabbed this right out of some of the materials that are available up on EDUCAUSE. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to make sure that you can see things in the back of the room. Can you all see that in the back of the room? You can? Okay, so success factor. That's good. This is a little bit of an experiment with me just going into the EDUCAUSE materials and grabbing these statistics so I can bring them out and talk to them. I didn't create them. And so this is part of what our new world is a little bit like. We're not spending a ton of time on this kind of stuff. We're going out and grabbing resources and we're dumping it into our presentation. So what's interesting here is to see all of the different kinds of things that are going on that are happening at every institution. This is nationwide. This is from the 2012 Core Data Survey at EDUCAUSE. And this is what institutions are working on and the kinds of things that they're doing in technology to impact student outcomes in a positive way. Now, it doesn't really show it on this particular graph, but the write-up about this tells me that e-textbooks and mobile apps were the 2 that made the most significant progress in the last year. But look at all of the things that are going on there. The dark blue is deployed broadly. Then you've got some early sort of pilots where things are deployed sparsely, maybe in certain areas of the campus. Another one is where they're experimenting and where they're planning. It's amazing how much is going on there. I would venture to guess that folks in this room have experience with at least something on this list. Am I right? How many of you can relate to something on this list that you are working with? And look around so that you can see each other. It's amazing. Another area of evolving technology access for students is in our enterprise systems. And this is something that we're looking at here at App State. We're just on the cusp of starting to think about what our mobile app suite is going to look like. In fact, we met for the first time yesterday, our portfolio committee, to work on web and mobile. What's happening out there across the country? Well, about half of the institutions have already extended their enterprise systems for mobile access for students. So half of them are already there. And then another 25% are in that planning stage. Well, after yesterday, I at least can say we're in that. So that's good. And then about 20% are not at the present planning to do that. Okay, so this is a big push. And what's happening here, students are able to use their mobile devices to get their class schedule, to look at their grades, to see what their balances are on their bursar account. They're using these applications to do things. Less frequently, what we're seeing is that they're actually using a mobile device to register for their classes. So the interaction at this point in most of these is really just sort of read access. Okay? The third thing on the top 10 is cloud and virtualization strategies. And this has a big impact on mobile. It doesn't necessarily mean that everything to do with cloud hits mobile, but again, I'm looking at this through the lens of mobile. So what are the kinds of things that are happening that do affect mobile? Well, almost every institution in the country is doing something to create collaboration tools for their students, whether it's the Google apps for education or other kinds of things, learning tools. What kind of collaboration tools are students getting to use? And they want those to be available to them. Sure, they're using them on their laptops and they're using them in mobile settings, but they also want to be able to use them on other devices. They want to be able to use their iPhones or their Droids or their tablets. They want to be able to access those kinds of services from there. We had a forum this spring for our students to talk to us about technology, our governance procedures, things that they were interested in. And I can't even begin to tell you how many students came up to me and asked for us to create access to our software licensing for this campus from a remote access. They're asking us for most of the software that they want to get to. Can we please stop having to come to a physical lab to get to that software? We want to be able to access it from one location. And we want to be able to just go to a spot on our laptops or our devices and get to that software. Now, they're asking for something even more than that, which is interesting. It's so fun when you actually get a chance to talk with them. One of the things that they're asking for is one central spot to access all of it. They want to access those library materials that they can get to online. They want to access the software. They want us to create one central place to go get all this stuff. They want to be able to get to it from their off-campus location. Most of our students don't live on campus, so they don't want to come back into these labs, right? They want to be able to access it from home. And even more interesting, the number of students who came to me, and I mean, this wasn't the majority, but there was a great, good number that did, talk to me about, well, I want to travel. I want to be able to do a semester abroad program. That's a big thing for us here at App State. It's going to be a big focus for us. And while they're traveling, they're thinking about their course schedule. They're perhaps a little bit worried that they can't get enough classes to stay on track. Maybe they end up with just one short, and they want to sign up for a class online while they're doing their semester abroad. And they also want to be able to access all of those resources that we just talked about while they're abroad. So they're asking for that remote access, regardless of whether they're at home during summer break or semester abroad, or just because they're here and they don't want to spend their evening hours necessarily on campus. They want to be able to do it from their own residence while they're here. So this is all part of what we're looking at. Can we get to the point of doing site licenses for campus software to help with this? That software model, we have to kind of wait for industry to catch up in some places because it's not where it needs to be for some places. But for many, it is. And we just have to make sure that we can get that hardware and infrastructure in place to support something like this. So that's something that we can work on together. And if we have that virtualized desktop environment, then what is it that we want to do with those lab spaces? And so here's the other portion of what students are asking for. If it's not a specialized lab, if it's an open lab, then can they do something different with it? We're asking them to do so much more collaboration in their classwork. Can we turn these into more freewheeling spaces where they can do collaboration. They're asking us to look at that, okay? They want to be able to just kind of move the furniture around, do little ad hoc kinds of things where they're looking at things together. And then the other part is that they want to be able to print from anywhere on campus. You probably have all heard that plenty of times, right? I want to queue it up on the printer, leave my apartment or my residence hall room, and pick it up on the way to class so I can hand it in. They're asking for that kind of flexibility. They're also looking for power stations all across the campus and solutions for power stations. Some of these folks, they're bringing their devices with them. Those are off campus, especially. They're bringing their devices with them, and they need to get through the whole day with those devices. So they're looking for some help in order to do that. So these are things that, it's not perhaps the traditional portion of mobile, but it's all part of the picture, isn't it? And we need to think about it. So how about staff and support model? That's the number 4 thing on the EDUCAUSE top 10 list. How is that changing? Well, look at tablets and smartphones. This particular graph, the only way that you actually even land on this graph is if you're expecting as an institution that your support calls are going to increase by 50% or more in the next 2 years. If you don't think your support calls are going to increase by that much, you didn't even land on this graph. So for those that are expecting at least a 50% increase in support requests, this is where they think they're going to see it, and this is how much of an increase they think they're going to see. We can't really absorb all of that. This is an issue that we really need to think about. We won't be able to staff for this. That's not going to be possible. So we're going to have a different approach to how we handle support. We're going to have to really think about this. But I can imagine that many of you are in the same state that we are at App State, where we know that we're still going to get continuing declining monetary support from the state. We're not going to get new positions for this. So how are we going to do it? And here's another one about faculty in particular, and such an interesting conversation that I got to have with students this spring about faculty technology and faculty know-how in the classroom. They are so respectful and so wanting processes to support faculty for using that technology in the classroom. They want us helping faculty to use that technology. They really feel like we haven't done enough there to support the faculty. They're not dinging the faculty for knowing, they're dinging us for not finding ways to help bring the faculty along, okay? So that's good. That's good information, and it's really good feedback. And it's supported nationwide. So this one comes from another ECAR study, the State of E-Learning in Higher Education, an Eye Towards Growth and Increased Access. And the top 2 things, and what this is all about is where are the concerns for e-learning initiatives? For all of the e-learning initiatives that are happening on your campus, and this is campus, campuses all across the country. What are the top 2 concerns? Look at them. Technological know-how of faculty and adequacy of staff. So if you don't think we have a support issue, oh yeah, we do. We absolutely do. So, and the interesting thing about this is not only are they the top 2, but they have the largest percentages of where it's a major concern or a moderate concern. So it's not just like there's a whole bunch of concern about this. No, there's a lot of concern. The concern's very deep where it exists. People need to solve this. We need to get on it. This is an area that we can collaborate on, and we truly need to. We need to really be thinking about how do we help faculty. We cannot just sort of leave them wandering alone on this. We have to find a way to help get them there. Security. What does security have to do with mobile? Well, the thing about security and mobile is that increasingly the conversation is really all about the data. That's what we want to think about. When we first started on our mobile sort of quest, there was a lot of concern about, are these going to be institutional devices? Are they going to be devices that the users bring? We're scared if the users bring them. It's really, we don't know how to maintain the security. Maybe they should all be institutional devices. Maybe we should have device management kinds of things to make sure that they're, well managed and people can't do things on them that they shouldn't be able to do. That has all changed. It is like being wiped away. Everyone is accepting that we are in a BYOE, bring your own everything environment. And we need to make all of these platforms work. And we're not going to manage devices that we don't own. That's just not the way we're going to do it. So how are we going to change our model for security? Well, we're going to have to really think about what it is that we're protecting. And it's the data. It's the institutional data. That's what we really need to think about. So how are we protecting that data, whether they're accessing it on our wired network at their desktop or on a mobile device? If we think about it that way, the direction of where we go becomes clearer and the solutions become more mainstream. So we need to think about how are we doing that. And strategic funding, that's number 6. So that's always a challenge for technology. This particular thing lands on the top 10 every single year. It sort of bops around, whether it's really close to the top or pretty kind of far down to the bottom. But it lands every single year because this is always, always a concern in terms of how are you strategic with your IT funding across the campus. It's always a challenge. So for mobile, if you kind of think about it from the mobile perspective, yes, there's a lot of technology challenge out there in terms of funding, and I could go into all sorts of it, but I want to put the mobile lens on this. And what's the mobile lens in terms of strategy for IT funding? What is the challenge there going to be? Well, a lot of it is going to be in infrastructure and services. It's kind of interesting. A lot of folks think, well, if we go mobile and people get to bring your own devices, it's going to save the university money. About 81% of campuses nationwide believe that. Even though it's going to be very difficult to make that happen, they believe somehow in their gut that there's going to be savings. I don't know. I'm on the other side because I'm thinking about all the money that I'm going to spend to make those devices work on campus. And certainly I am going to be doing that because I have to think about the infrastructure. And you can see that me, along with everybody else, the infrastructure is probably one of the biggest spend areas for the next 2 years. We've got to make sure that our wireless connection to the internet can cover all of these myriad of devices and everything that they're trying to do with them. At App State, we're about to go from a 1 gig connection to a 10 gig connection in a couple of weeks because of something like this. It's important to us, and we have to make sure that we're staying on top of it. But where we are not necessarily staying where we need to is with our wireless deployment. We've got wireless pretty well spread out across the campus. In fact, maybe better than some areas. But our generation of wireless that we deployed did not take into account the density of devices that students were going to bring. And so now we're finding that the residence halls, even though they have wireless, they are complaining all the time about how good that wireless is. So here you all are coming up with these wonderful ways for students to access things in their residence halls, getting them to do flipped classrooms, do work at night, and they're struggling on that wireless network in order to be able to do the things that we're setting out for them to do. We're finding that as we go to the residence halls and get to work on them one by one, that we're needing to bring in some very high-density wireless deployments now. And that's becoming more and more mainstream. It's not like we're the only ones. Industry is going there for a reason, because everywhere you go, that is becoming the need. Just the density of devices that are trying to access one single access point is just beyond what the industry thought it was going to be. It's happening very fast. Services are going to grow. We don't have the money for that. We're going to have to figure out how we're going to cover it. So that's going to be an interesting thing. We do think there's going to be a little bit of a savings, a little bit of a decline in devices. And some of that on the student side it will translate into those open labs where we're able to just kind of say, okay, for this particular lab, we're going to make it a BYOE, so you're going to bring your own device, and we're going to not buy lab computers because it's not a specialty lab, and we're going to let you get to your stuff through a virtual desktop environment instead. So that's one of the only places that we can get savings. Well, that's not enough savings to cover everything else. So in the long run, yes, it might work out, but we're not at that stage right now. We're sort of at the beginning stage. Network and Wi-Fi are the two places where you see the most investment currently. So it is in those, what are we doing on the wireless networks to really hit that density factor? And then what are we doing on the internet side of things, the bandwidth requirements for the whole campus to make sure that we can do all of the things that we want to do. So those are the two. We're making great strides on the network side, but the Wi-Fi side is still a challenge for us at App State. So online learning. This is the one that really speaks to what we're doing here today. And this one is so fun and interesting. The excitement around being able to use these devices, all of the plethora of free, sort of openware, fair use, learning object tools that are out there, and what it means for what we can do with technology in the classrooms and outside the classrooms is just exciting everybody. It is so fun to see this. The students are asking for this like crazy. They want us to use those. They want that mode of learning. They don't want sort of the lecture at the beginning, at the front of the classroom, like I'm doing here today, right? That's not what they're after. They're after interactive kinds of things. They want to get involved in their learning. So they want those learning objects. They want that opportunity to really be immersed in the learning. Kind of an interesting statistic, and I don't know if this is, it's from students and it's what they say, so, you have to take it for what it is. But on the student survey, what students most wished the faculty would do in their classrooms was to use gaming kinds and simulation kinds of software. That's what they want the most. That's the top of their list of what they're looking for. So interesting. Now, they grew up that way, right? I know my sons did. So I think they're just trying to figure out, that's fun to them, whether it makes sense or it doesn't make sense. That's what they're after. They're after that kind of thing. But they want to be immersed in their learning. They want to be involved in it. E-portfolios are on the rise. That's another way that students really kind of get into the learning, get reflective about it. It can be a good pedagogical tool. They're looking for all of these kinds of involvement. All of that, that long list that we saw, at the very beginning of the presentation with the e-textbooks, with being able to do online collaboration tools, with being able to e-portfolios, with accessing their online learning management system. All of those kinds of things they want. They're after all of that. They're bringing these devices to the campus. We're sort of at that stage where they're landing on us like crazy. We're trying to absorb and just even keep them functioning. But the next question is, what do they get to do with them? What are we allowing them to do on those devices? And how are we making that available to them? So this is a big area for us, and something that we really are focusing on as everybody else is across the country. This is our prime area. It's what you guys are talking about most today, which is pretty cool. It's very exciting. Another thing about online learning, another sort of statistic out there, it's becoming more and more prevalent that faculty and curriculum folks are really making the push to say, yes, we want materials to be available to our students online. It's overwhelming. When you look at, App State is a master's level institution. We're almost at that 75%, with it being a very high priority for anytime, anywhere access to course materials for students. And of course, we have As You Learn, and that definitely solves that, right? They've got that there. Now, the students are asking for more. They want more collaboration tools. They want that lab software. So we're not done yet, not by any stretch of the imagination. The other portion about this that's kind of interesting is that we haven't sort of caught up with our practices and processes. So the guidelines for how we want them to use those devices is not really there yet. That's something that's lagging behind. How important is that? I'm not really sure. I'll be honest with you. I think that that's going to come of its own accord as we develop these devices and create the opportunity for them to do things with them. I don't think they're going to need a lot of direction there. I think we just need to make it available. We need to listen to what it is that they're asking for. We need to think about our curriculum and what makes sense and find that sweet spot of where we can go with this that keeps them engaged, that keeps them interested in being in college, that keeps them interested in being at our college instead of somebody else's college. We need to find that part and figure out what those things are that we can be working on. So number 8 is supporting the BYOE environments, the Bring Your Own Everything environments. And the two things that I think are kind of interesting about this is from the BYOD and Consumerization of IT in Higher Ed Research, just released, I think, in February of this year from ECAR. Wonderful report about the Bring Your Own sort of environments that are happening on campus and where things are going. So the conclusion there is to be mobile ready, create those environments that are mobile friendly, that can meet the expectations of faculty and students and staff. Easy peasy. That's what we're here for. Just get her done. That's all we have to do. We have to get from here to there. We have to figure out where we are, and we got to figure out how we're going to get there. What does the there look like for us, and how are we going to get there? But one of the things that I think is a strong message that I can bring is that there is an opportunity for collaboration as we do this. And this is the part that really is so intriguing to me, that makes my job so much fun and interesting, is the opportunity to create collaborations where we want to go. So IT can kind of go off and do some things. We can make sure the networks are there. We can, but we can't do by ourselves as much as we could do if we worked together. If we worked together, what kind of cool thing could we do for faculty to really help bring them along with technology? If we worked together, what could those open labs really look like? And what could we achieve in that area? If we worked together, what would those online learning environments look like, and what would their access look like for our students? We can go off and do things separately, but if we come together, we'll do something so much better. So much better. So that's part of what I want to leave you with today. Here's our top 10 issues, and you can see that there's something there. If you're involved in technology or teaching and learning, there's something for you here. You're involved in this top 10. And there's a thing somewhere in here for you to do. And if we're all doing it and we're working on it together, it's going to be much better than if we go off in our silos and do it on our own. Do you all see things that you can do in here? I mean, how many of you see something that's for you in this top 10? Do you all see something for you? There's lots of things here that relate to what you're doing. So how do we find ways to work on it together? So where do we intersect with these challenges and opportunities? This is kind of like, the formal part of the presentation is over. I just want to have a little bit of a, I'm looking at time, fast discussion. Do I even have a minute, or should I? One? No, we're good. Okay, all right, good. So where do we intersect with the challenges and opportunities on this list? Where do you see things that match up and are interesting to you? Who has something on here that is an interesting point?
Well, this is not on that list, but I just saw this morning that Google is going to offer textbooks. Yeah, and it's like, that just happened this week. And it's starting in August.
Right.
Yeah.
That is on that list. It's improving student outcomes.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say.
And that's an interesting, so that's a great thing for us to work on together. How are we going to do that on our campus, and how can technology help with that? Tony.
I was going to say, one interesting thing in the news this week was apparently Facebook's mobile
Yes.
Investment is finally starting to take off for them, and it's probably more surprising that it didn't do well to start with than that it's doing well now. But I want to put together a couple of these things: the improving student outcomes and the faculty issues with using technology. I think they're very closely related in that we don't do as good a job as we need to do with having faculty understand how they could improve what they do care about, which
Right.
is student learning outcomes,
Right.
by using technology. In other words, figuring out to what question is a particular technology an answer. And if we do a better job of that, we'll have better faculty adoption.
I agree. And what I like about what Tony is saying is that technology is not always the answer. We have to know that. You know, I think that's really important. And it's very important that you have technologists that understand that. Technology is not always the answer. It's not always my answer, and I'm a technologist. Yes?
I think traditionally the instructors come into the university situation, they're enculturated to teach as they learn. And in many cases, that enculturalization is not a good match with the students who are coming to campus.
Right.
I see as one of the solutions to a number of those challenges, getting to be part of the enculturation process with instructors as they come into campus. But that is probably the highest political quagmire that we face.
Yeah.
Because it is sacred territory for instructors, for professors, and getting to be part of the process for bringing faculty and instructors into that technology environment. I think that's a huge challenge that we all face.
I think it is too, and I think, you know, we have to find ways to, Tony and I were just talking about this about a half hour ago, we need to find ways to bring faculty into the process so that they can help guide it and drive it as well. And it is a challenge. I mean, there's no question, and I really appreciate your perspective about how you're enculturated to do your instruction. That's a really good point.
Just want to tie that idea up with people from Sobel, Scholarship for Teaching and Learning. I think that there's a significant portion of them who are taking advantage of these emerging technologies, and they're marrying that pedagogical practice and applying research to find out how can these best be used. And that's a place where I think we can meet. So when the student says, for example, gee, I sure would like more gaming.
Right.
In certain classes and in certain objectives, absolutely that may be the way to go.
Right.
But in certain others it may not. But right now it's more anecdotal in regards to how do we engage that. So that's where I think the Scholarship for Teaching and Learning can help us really focus in on what's really working and how best to do that.
I really appreciate that point of view. And I think that, you know, in my gut, that's probably the thing that when students are saying we want more gaming, the thing that's giving me a little angst is like, well, how successful is that really going to be to help them with their learning? Sure, they want it, but, you know, maybe it will be successful in some places, but maybe it won't in others. So that's a really good point. Yes?
Well, I think that when we talk about how to help the faculty, there are some good models that we have on campus. So when we were moving hybrid, LTS, Emily, and Lisa did a workshop for us over the summer, an intensive professional development for us to help ease our concerns and really train us into thinking of using our own courses we were going to teach in the fall or in the spring. And having that collaboration with LTS is really helpful for us. And so we have models here of apps that can do that. I'm sure that everyone does in these universities. What kind of professional development activities do we have that really work?
Right.
This isn't, that isn't new. The technology isn't new, but what kinds of models do we already have? And I think that would be a good one and use it. So.
Good. Thank you. Yes?
A couple of quick comments. What we're doing is we're having collaborative teams from 8 courses. So we bring together a technical editor, instructional designer, what we call an enhancement specialist for software, and the subject matter expert. So we don't expect each faculty member to master all the skill sets we really do.
Right.
And a quick comment on identification.
Good.
I use it in my classes. And there's a disconnect oftentimes between faculty and students. Some of the faculty were very dismissive about the games I was using, but I did a survey at the end of my courses, and almost 100% of students said it was very helpful to play the games.
Is that
so
right?
we need to listen to the end user rather than making sort of segment that's not the way I learned. I think it's silly, so I'm not going to do it.
What kind of classes are you teaching?
I teach symbolic logic, introduction to philosophy and ethics.
Okay, and gaming is working in that.
Very well.
Awesome. Over here, yes.
I just wanted to make a comment on the gaming. So I think what we have to do is change the way we think about what a game is. Because I think, traditionally we think video game, well, they want something right, they want to be and they're doing this, and that doesn't work for everything. But just as simple as, okay, we're going to take this quiz, you're the red team, you're the yellow team, and we're going to rock the shit across, and who finishes first. I mean, that really is, that's gaming. So, or it's really simple elements, technical fiction. So I think if we change what we think of what is a game.
Excellent. Okay, good. I'm looking at time and feeling like I probably want to wrap up. Just another, couple of things to leave you with. We need to think about what it is that we need to do to be productive as we work together. We can't just say, let's work together on this. We have to sometimes consider what will make that productive. Sometimes it's understanding each other's situations, being able to walk a mile in each other's shoes as we're doing this. It's not always easy for these groups to come together, the learning groups and the technology groups. And so that's something that I'm really focusing on and really thinking about. Because it's important that we do find a way to solve this together. When we solve it together, we will do a better job. We'll be more cohesive. It won't be in a silo. It won't work partially. It'll be a comprehensive solution that we can bring forward for the university. So I really am always sort of thinking about what are the barriers that are there that we need to knock down so that we really can work well together. So I think that's really important. And the last thing I just kind of want to leave you with is, let's get started. Think about this through your day with all of the neat sessions that you're going to and how you can create a collaboration that is larger than yourself to be able to achieve more than you could do if you were doing this on your own. So thank you and have a wonderful day.